Hello everybody, good afternoon and welcome to the United Stand. Hope you're all doing well. Latest Manchester United news and lots to get into. We will be talking about this new ownership model and how it's highly likely that the new owners of Manchester United will abandon Old Trafford and build a new stadium. Very interesting article from James Ducker in The Telegraph setting out why, logically and sadly, it probably doesn't make sense to renovate Old Trafford. We'll be talking about that and what it means to the new ownership. Also, Cody Gakpo is Erik ten Hag's January transfer priority. Does that please you? He will be playing for the Netherlands in about 45 minutes. You can watch us on That's Football doing a watch-along of that, a Cody Gakpo watch, you could call it. We'll talk about that and where that's coming from. Harry Maguire has been talking about his future at Manchester United. Of course, Manchester United's current captain believes he can get back into United's plans. And we'll also be talking about the situation with people heading out on loan in January and where we stand with the latest people interested in Manchester United. I didn't talk about it this morning, actually, but there has been comments coming out of Saudi Arabia that they would back any investors from Saudi Arabia moving for Manchester United because it represents Saudi Arabia really well. So we've had Dubai, we've now got Saudi Arabia, Apple are out of it, but lots and lots to get into. I can't remember who was it who said that. I just saw somebody say make it Apple. So lots to get involved in. I'm going to start off with the Gakpo story because it's transfer related, but I really wanted to get into this James Ducker story about the stadium. 7 to 8 years, not 78. It will take 7 to 8 years at least. So let's say 7 years at least to redevelop Old Trafford. Can we afford to wait 7 years to redevelop Old Trafford? Are we better off rebuilding a new stadium? This is on the Glazers, by the way. The fact that we're in this difficult position is on the Glazers. By neglecting Old Trafford for 17 years, we're now in a position where it's so decayed that it would take 7 years to renovate it. If they just kept renovating it over the last 17 years, we wouldn't be in this position. So we're going to be in a position where Old Trafford may not be our home anymore. That is on the Glazers, whether people like it or not. 7 years to redevelop and renovate it. If they'd have kept on top of it over the last 17, we wouldn't need to do everything that needs to be done. It's disgusting. Are you ready for later, Mark, to understand what USA stands for? Ultimate Soccer Awesomeness? I'm very ready. That's football, 7 o'clock. Get ready to get a defeat handed on a plate. I'm sorry, I respect our American brothers and sisters, but you are going to get beat tonight. As much as I hope you have a good World Cup, you will get beat by the English, I'm afraid. Anyway, let's get going. So we're going to start off with this story that came out this lunchtime in relation to Cody Gakpo. It's coming from Seb Nonda, Sebastian Dennis, real name, Seb Nonda on Twitter. He works for Foot Mercato. He spoke about Cody Gakpo a lot in the summer, and he was very accurate about that. He's basically said that Cody Gakpo is Manchester United's top priority in January. PSV want around 60 million euros. We'll come back to that. But he says Erik ten Hag, who particularly appreciates Gakpo, has made him his winter priority. Ten Hag likes the immense advantage of the player being able to play on the entire in the entire front of the attack. So left, right, centre, and even in behind. I think this is a positive update around Cody Gakpo. I think some people are treating Gakpo as a bit of a speculative link to Manchester United, when I think very much he is probably the most obvious and hot favourite to come to Manchester United. Obviously, we know in the summer that we were pretty close to signing him. I mean, the conversations took place. Ten Hag, let the club know that he was very interested in him. Some people sort of brushed it under the carpet as an alternative to Anthony, but the profile of Gakpo to Anthony is completely different. Anthony filled a need for a left-footed forward. Gakpo is not left-footed. Gakpo is more of a player that plays off the left, right-footed, and can play through the middle. We saw him score a very good header for the Netherlands on was it Monday in the World Cup, and I think judging by this story, it leans towards the contradiction that exists in some of our fans' thoughts that we should be going for an out-and-out number 9, when it appears that the attractiveness of Gakpo to Ten Hag is actually his ability to play in multiple positions along the front line. So maybe Ten Hag's not looking for a out-and-out number 9. Maybe he's looking for a forward that can play in multiple positions. I mean, we know that Rashford's been used through the middle, probably better off the left. We know that Gakpo can play off the left and through the middle. What's his better position? Martial is mainly a forward, but can play off the left, can play off a striker. So Sancho can play left and right. So I think that it makes a lot of sense. I mean, look, we've got a lot more things to talk about on the show, especially we've got a lot more to talk about over the next few weeks about who's going to ultimately buy Manchester United. It's almost been forgotten that we need to buy desperately in January. We've got no Cristiano Ronaldo and we were short up front already. We imperatively must and will and urgently do need to sign somebody in January. That cannot be ignored because you're obsessed about Apple or Dubai's sovereign wealth fund or Saudi Arabia or investors from America or Sir Jim Ratcliffe. We can't just obsess about that. There is a short-term problem where we need to get in the Champions League. So we do have to buy in January. And I think Cody Gakpo is quite clearly a very, very hot topic for Erik ten Hag. The question that I like to ask is, can we afford 60 million euros in January? The price seems to have gone up a bit. I was pretty sure it was set at 35 million. In the summer, there was talk of 25 million. So he's basically doubled in price from the summer, from 25 million to 50 million, because that's what 60 million euros is. I don't think he's going for 60 million euros. I think that the price will be about 35 million pounds, 40 million euros, which is about right. I mean, PSV can ask for what they like. We can do add-ons. I'm happy for that, but we're not going to pay 50 million quid for somebody who has had a reasonable season for PSV. But yeah, we shouldn't be. This is a deal that you do with add-ons. This is a deal where you sign him for 40 million and you say we'll give you another 20 if he scores this amount of goals and. You know, we get in the Champions League. I don't agree with paying 60 million euros, but the market can be dictated to by the competition. Are we not in a situation where Manchester United really is valued at 4 billion and yet we'll probably go for 6 billion? And we might be in that position with Gakpo where he's really valued at 40 million and he ends up going for 60 million. So we'll have to wait and see, but he is clearly the priority for Erik ten Hag, and that to me pleases me. I'm looking forward to watching the Netherlands at 4 o'clock, and I'm looking forward to more of United fans who probably haven't seen much of Gakpo, seeing what he's all about. I think there is a bit of a myth that he's just another Rashford. There's a bit of a myth that he's just a right-footed left winger. I think that 6'2", early 20s, I think he's got this immense potential to develop and become a centre forward. I'm loath to use the words Thierry Henry, but you could use the words Anthony Martial, who was a left winger and has become a number 9. And I think that's. I think Erik ten Hag likes the fluidity of that. I think he likes the development of that, and I think he likes the idea that Gakpo would probably go straight into his starting 11, but there's numerous places he can play him. You know, he could play him off the right, he could play him off the left, he could play him through the middle. First super chat. Gakpo plays across the front four. Ten Hag wants versatility to maximise our attacking chances. We need to learn to create for the team before learning how to create for one striker. Red, it was your first super chat, and it's probably one of the best super chats we've had. It was absolutely spot on. Yes, I couldn't put it any better myself. I'm not going to sit here and say we're going to sign Gakpo in January, but I will sit here and say that it's very obvious that Ten Hag wants Gakpo in January, because it's well known that when Ronaldo was potentially leaving in August, the replacement was Gakpo. So what's changed in 3 months? Ronaldo wanted to go in August. Ten Hag was happy to let him go if he got a replacement, and the replacement was Cody Gakpo. That's the story. I don't know whether people know that or have figured that out or just want to ignore that, but that's the story. Go back to August and read stories from good journalists. But I'm telling you, because I know it, that Manchester United didn't let Ronaldo go, so we didn't buy Cody Gakpo. But Ten Hag, the reason we were being linked to Cody Gakpo was because Ten Hag wanted Cody Gakpo as the replacement for Ronaldo if Ronaldo was going to go. That's why it didn't happen. So we already know that Ten Hag's replacement for Ronaldo is Cody Gakpo. Well, Ronaldo's gone. So are the club going to get him Cody Gakpo? We will wait and see. Would the Glazers pay for players on their way out? We've spoken about this a few times, Salim. It seems to come up every show. And honestly, if you are... I'm trying to think of a different thing. If you're going to sell your car, you've got a car and you're going to sell your car, and it's got crisps on the back seat, and one of the tyres needs replacing, are you going to sell it with crisps on the back seat and the tyre that needs replacing? Or are you going to clean the car and get a new tyre and give it a wash? You're going to try and sell that car in the best condition it can be in because you'll get more money for it. Man United are not going to not buy players in January because the Glazers are going to sell. Buying a player in January could be the difference between Europa League and Champions League next year. If we're in the Champions League next year, we're a more valuable asset to sell. So we will be buying in January. And I understand what people are saying because they don't trust the Glazers and they don't like the Glazers and they're going, they won't buy any players because they won't want to spend any more money. But the money they're going to make, £40 million on Cody Gakpo, is nothing compared to the extra £500 million they could get if we're in the Champions League next year. Also going to quickly add on, there's a reason why City can create so well for Haaland. They did cutbacks into the box for everyone before doing it for Haaland, which is why they can constantly find him, says Red. Thank you very much for your super chat again there, pal. Make sure you smash a like and subscribe to the video, by the way. So that's the story on Gakpo. Get your comments in below what you think about that. I think for me it's very obvious and logical that he is the number one. I just want to give a shout out to MUFC MPB, by the way, because they were the person who broke that story from Sebastian Dennis via Foot Mercato. So big shout out to them. Appreciate that. Now we move on to what I really want to get my teeth into on this show, which is this story that's more akin and linked to what everyone's obsessed with at the moment, which is the sale of Manchester United. So very good article by James Ducker in the Telegraph this afternoon talking about the refurbishment or rebuild or renovation or whatever you want to call it of Manchester United's football ground, Old Trafford. In this article, and James Ducker is very well sourced around Manchester United correspondent for the Telegraph. He is saying that the rebuild of Manchester United or renovation or whatever the people want to call it will take 7 to 8 years at least. So if you're like me and you don't want Old Trafford knocked down, you don't want a scenario like Arsenal, where Highbury, with all its history, is left behind and they move a mile down the road to the Emirates, which is a purpose-built stadium. I don't want that. Old Trafford, I remember watching the VHS tapes when I used to get home from school with my granddad, and, they'd be showing United in the 60s, and Old Trafford is very different, but very similar. That the back of Old Trafford, and it's still, you can see what it was in the 50s and 60s. I don't want Old Trafford to be knocked down. I don't want Old Trafford to be somewhere else. I want that Old Trafford to be the place that we are. But I think we're moving further and further away from it. And I think it's because of the Glazers. Because if it's going to take 7 to 8 years to redevelop that ground, and along the way, we're going to have to close sections of it to build on it. So if you want to expand the certain stands at Old Trafford, you'll have to close them while they're being rebuilt. It's a nightmare what needs to be done, and that's why it's going to take so long. The quickest way to do it is to keep playing at Old Trafford and build a new one right next to it. You could probably do that in 3 or 4 years. It will be cheaper, and the end product would be awesome. But we wouldn't be playing at Old Trafford anymore. And this will be very hard. I find that hard. There'll be a lot more people than me who find that really difficult to get their head around. But ultimately, and James Ducker put this, if you are the new buyer of Manchester United, do you want to spend the next 10 years rebuilding Old Trafford whilst Man City and Newcastle and everyone else are focusing on the pitch? Or do you want to get a new stadium built, which will be better than the current one and more modern in half that time, and get the rebuild moving quicker? And that's a really difficult situation. And it's an unfair situation for the fans, primarily, but also the new owner. Because why is it that Old Trafford is going to take 10 years to renovate and a new stadium is going to take half that time? Because the previous owners, the current owners, the Glazers, spent 17 years doing nothing apart from painting it. Nothing. To leave Old Trafford for 17 years without anything is a joke, an absolute joke. And that is why we're in this position. I think people hear the word rust and decay and think it's being sensationalist. That ground has been left to rot and rust. And now we're in a position where we're probably going to lose it. So for whatever the legacy of the Glazers is, and God, there are some bad legacies, they look like being the people that take us out of Old Trafford because they left it to die. And that is really sad. There will be some people who say, well, look, we just take 10 years to rebuild it. We can't leave Old Trafford. And maybe the new owners will do that. But logically, from a rebuild point of view, it makes sense to just build a new modern purpose stadium, doesn't it? Which is sad. We're almost being pushed down that road. And we'll have to wait and see. But very well written article and very logical as well. It's going to take a long, long time to redevelop and rebuild Old Trafford. And at the end of the day, I suppose the obvious way of putting it is, if you've got, go back to the car again, if you've got a car on your drive and it's old and rusty, do you spend loads of money on, redoing it, rebuilding it to make it like a modern car? Or do you just buy a modern car? And that's the situation United have been in, because we haven't looked after it over the last 17 years. Brandon says, I've never been to Old Trafford and I've always wanted to go, but if it's 7 to 8 years to renovate or 2 to 3 for a state-of-the-art stadium, it's only logical for the new one. Damn, the Glazers ruined us, says Brandon. I'm completely on board with what you're saying, Brandon. It's 100% logical to build a new stadium. But, oh my God, that hurts. That absolutely floors me. I have been to Old Trafford many times. I'm very fortunate to do that. And it absolutely floors me that Old Trafford could be no more in the next 5 years if we build a new stadium. All that history, all that we are, gone. The legacy of the Glazers will damage this club for a long, long time beyond after they've gone. And you know what? The fans were always right. It's not the fans' fault. We were always saying, and I'm not even going to say we, because there's people who've been doing this for a long, long time. I've been on and on about Old Trafford and the renovation of Old Trafford, and it's just been ignored. Someone said, can you do a poll? Let's do it. Old Trafford poll. Renovate new stadium. Get involved there. But yeah, look, it's a tough one, isn't it? Personally, I'm not going to be moved on this. I don't want us to move from Old Trafford. I mean, I was saying this to somebody the other day, because our office isn't far. Our studio is not far from Old Trafford. You can look out the window and you can see Old Trafford from our studio. It's almost like you're in it at times. And if you've ever been to Old Trafford, or you look at any pictures, and this is just me being thick. I'm not an engineer. When you look at Old Trafford and you look at the roof of the stadiums, they've got these big slanted big slanted metal structures that are like that. And I always thought they looked like you just put, I thought they built it like that because they're sort of slanted, that they built it like that. So you just build another tier all the way around. Apparently it's to help the roof stay up. But I've been thinking that for years and years and years. I always thought that Old Trafford, they just keep building tiers on top. And they are building tiers in our eyes if we have to leave Old Trafford. The thing is, I understand that people will say, let's build a new stadium. I understand that. The thing is, we never should have had to. The sad thing about Old Trafford is that if we have to move, it's because it's been neglected to the point of it's not logical to rebuild it and renovate it. And that, to me, is unforgivable on behalf of the people who've been in charge of this club for the last 17 years. It's been left to a position where, from a business point of view, 100% you build a new stadium. From a rebuild point of view of your club, you build. I mean, look, how much is it going to cost to renovate Old Trafford? And it probably won't look anywhere near as good as a new stadium. I would say that you will build a new stadium in 5 years for half the price of what it will take to renovate Old Trafford, which will take twice as long, cost twice as much, and won't look as good as a new stadium. When you see what Madrid has done with their stadium, why would you spend much longer doing a job that's more frustrating? New stadium makes sense, says Levi. Thank you very much. We can still renovate the South Stand as well, and maybe the inside of the stadium. And can we do like Real Madrid is doing, says Oscar. Look, anything's possible. We could call it New Trafford, says Paul, but what becomes of Old Trafford? I mean, Old Trafford for me, I don't know what it's like in the countries that you live in, but if you live in the UK, we have listed buildings. There are sites of national interest that cannot be knocked down. I think Old Trafford is should be a heritage site in the UK. I don't know. What would you do with Old Trafford? Runaway Meatball, thank you very much for the chat. Build the new one around Old Trafford, says Glenn. Well, there's a massive area outside the back of the Stretford end, which is a huge car park that United own. So you could build right next to it. But could you keep Old Trafford? Probably not. But I agree with Hale. It looks like a new stadium will be pushed hard by the new owners because really they're going to be left in a position where that's the case. Anyway, very interesting, very interesting. We'll have a look at the poll in a minute. Welcome to the Members Club, Jamie. So in relation to the sale of Old Trafford, a lot of people are asking about that. I will be live after the England game tonight with the latest news, but I think that there's not a lot to offer today. I think it's because England are playing and a lot of journalists are out in Qatar and they're focused on the England game. And obviously, a lot of the information we get is led by the press. What I would say is that there is no obligation on behalf of Manchester United to update the press or the fans about what's happening with the sale of the club. So we'll always be led by leaks. I think I can't really... I've not heard anything and I've not read anything about any difference from what I said this morning, that I still believe that we're going to be bought by US money, and I still believe that that's the plan for the Glazers and what they want to happen. But we do need... what I will say that's new is we do need some updates from the club around how long this is going to take. You cannot just issue a statement saying we're looking to sell and then just go, that's it. Like, we need to know what the time frame is for this. We need to know, is it an open process and they're going to wait for bids over the next 3 months? Have they got bids now that they're considering? That's what we need to know. Once the bid's been accepted, a lot of people, myself included, can sort of figure out how long it's going to take for the sale to go through. But at the moment, we need to know, like, when's the cut-off for bids? Man United might have said that, yeah, we're up for sale, but we're going to consider bids over the next 12 months. They might have bids already that they're going to accept. We do need to know that information, and it will come out. And that's what I'm interested in at the moment. I think, I'm like everybody else. I'm interested when you hear about Sir Jim Radcliffe and Barney and Apple and Dubai and America. I'm interested in that, but I actually want to sort of get some sort of information on how long is the process going to be. Because, of course, there will be people going, well, I can raise 6 billion, but I need a couple of months and I want the club. Are they going to be allowed to wait 2 months? How long is this submission of bid period going to go for? That will be interesting. We can always get a straightforward news from you, Mark. There are so much out there. So Kai. And, well, that's what we try and do on the show, is try and take all the information about Manchester United that's out there and just, simplify it into a way which is a conversation. Right, poll. Quite encouraged by this. We've done a poll. We've had a few thousand of you voting. Keep your votes coming in. The options are build a new stadium or renovate Old Trafford. And I'll tell you what, it puts my mind at ease that 54% of you are saying renovate Old Trafford and 46% of you are saying new stadium. I'm quite happy that that's around 50-50 because I think it is going to be around that. I think it's logical that we have to build a new stadium because of the Glazers neglecting Old Trafford and forcing the new owners into a situation where, it's disgusting really, isn't it? The reason it's going to take so long and cost so much to renovate Old Trafford is because of the Glazers, but they're going to sell and leave it to somebody else. Yeah, we'll have to wait and see, won't we? What else do I want to talk about? What was that about? Quite a few players are heading out on loan in January. I think Charlie Savage and Kobe Mainoo's been mentioned as well. A few players apparently going to be going on loan in January. But look, just to be a bit topical, don't know whether you saw it, Harry Maguire's done an interview ahead of the England game. Obviously played reasonably well against Iran, feeling quite confident. This happens a lot with Maguire and Shaw, especially. They go away with England and they seem to be happier than they are at Man United. And he's spoken about, his confidence in his own ability, the belief he has in himself, and, his ambition and obsession is to start for his club every week. So look, good, confident words coming out of Harry Maguire. Always seems to be happy for England, certainly seems to play better for England. My theory on that is that international football is clearly not as good as domestic football. It's slower, and England are mainly playing against teams that they're going to have a lot of the attack for, so he defends less and he has a lot more space and he's good at passing. So I think there's plenty of logical reasons why Maguire suits England and why he's happier playing for England. And I think if he has a good tournament and comes back to Manchester United, that can only be a positive for us. Do I think he can play for Man United every week? No. And that's not even being horrible. I think if Lindelof and Maguire played their best game every week, they still wouldn't start for Manchester United if Varane and Martinez are fit because they're better. So I heard Sam Allardyce, 100% England record, Sam Allardyce, he was saying that Maguire needs to leave because he needs to play. And logically, he won't be playing at Manchester United unless there's injury. But I like what Harry Maguire said. The confidence is good. He's playing in a tournament for England where he knows he will start every game, so he feels good. He's got the backing of the manager. He's in a good place, and it's logical that he's feeling confident and he wants to spread that into his club career where he's hardly played this season. So this is the high point of Harry's season so far, so you can understand that confidence. But logically, I think sometimes you've got to be realistic, and I wouldn't want to knock his confidence because you've got to believe in yourself. But realistically, if Varane and Martinez are fit, neither Lindelof or Maguire are going to start. You're always going to be battling for third choice, aren't you? So, look, what the future is for Harry Maguire, Victor Lindelof, or any other player like Fred or someone else who logically don't start if everyone's fit, maybe their future is best served elsewhere. Maybe they're happy to earn their wages and sit on the bench. I don't know, but it's certainly nice to see some of the players in the World Cup who look clearly very happy. Marcus Rashford was talking a couple of days ago saying that he's on the pitch for the first time in a long time, feeling confident because he's not concerned about his injuries or anything like that. So look, the World Cup is a great chance for them to blossom and do well, and I hope they do. The longer they wait to sell the worse Old Trafford gets, Marks as Trey. Exactly. And let me just read this one. And Runaway Meatball says the Yankees built a new stadium next to their old one, and it's a soulless corporate tourist attraction where they occasionally play baseball. I'm going to just come back to that. Georgie has sorely missed the best as Red since 1975. Yeah, of course it's I don't know how many years it is. Was it? I'm tempted to say 2003. That we lost George Best. It may have been 2004, but it was on this day, wasn't it? And I was actually in Dublin this time, whenever it was. And there's not been anything around United that's hit me harder than that. And I never even saw him play. It was just such a sad time, and it is always worth mentioning it on this day for George Best because. He was one of the players that sort of my introduction and education on Manchester United was based on the Busby Babes in the 60s because they were the tapes that people would be going, what are you talking about, tapes? We didn't have DVDs, we didn't have the internet. It was 2005, thank you very much. We didn't have DVDs, we didn't have the internet, so you used to come home from school and it was 3 or 4 channels and that was it. And my granddad was a builder, so on nights like this, it would be dark at 4 o'clock, so we'd be home early when we were home from school. And we always used to go to my grandparents because my parents worked after school. And he'd be sat there in the living room with the fire on, and he'd put, the story of Manchester United VHS on, or George Best's best goals. And that's what I sort of grew up on. So even though I never saw George Best play, he was probably one of the first players that I knew as a Manchester United player, even though this was in the late 80s, because you didn't have YouTube or Sky Sports to watch the current team, and there was only one game a week on the TV. So match of the day, or that lucky one game that United were on, you might get to watch the current team. But on tape, you could watch George Best whenever you wanted. So George Best was always a player that I felt I had an affiliation with, and I'm sure many people of my age did as well and did similar things. Sir Bobby Charlton, Dennis Law. These players played way before I was born, but they became part of my education and upbringing because we had all these tapes of them playing. And I always remember George Best in the Northern Ireland shirt nodding the ball out of Pat Jennings' hands when they played England. So yeah, it hit most Man United fans really badly, but that hit me really bad when that happened all those years ago, which would be 17 years ago now. 17 years since George Best died. It doesn't seem that long ago, but yeah, legend of this club, legend. Barcelona and Madrid have basically just destroyed both theirs to the core and rebuilt it from the foundations, so wouldn't need to move the grounds, as Seb. The problem if you do that is if you knock Old Trafford down and build it from the core, where do you play? Where do you play for 3 years or however long it takes? When Mark retires, tears will flow. Facts, says Curran. Look, I'm just going to say this. This is really important to me. On the subject of stadia, which is what we've been talking about mainly here, and it's a really important conversation because it's like the sale of the club. Old Trafford is our church. It is. Old Trafford is the place every United fan wants to go once. Many of us go more than once, but that's Manchester United. You go to Old Trafford, walk past Old Trafford, that's it. That is your church. If football is religion, that is your church. That's what it is. Or it's the place, and I know church is not everything for all religions, but you know what I mean. That is the place you go to worship. That is the place you go. And that is Old Trafford. That's what it is. It's not as easy as going knock it down and build something else because Old Trafford is our soul. It is our heartbeat. That's why I wouldn't want us to build a new stadium. I'd be against it. But I would sympathise with the new owners why they would probably look to build a new stadium. But what I will say is this. Spurs ground is fantastic. Absolutely fantastic. But I prefer White Hart Lane. The Emirates, I've been there. I walk round it, it's like a bloody car park. It's soulless. Highbury, even now, it's flats. But there's a soul there. I loved Highbury. Goodison Park's one of my favourite grounds. That's gone in 2 years. They're building a new one. I guarantee the new one will be everything. Probably wipe your arse. But it still won't be Goodison Park. I am who I am. Some people disagree, some people don't. But nothing's going to replace Old Trafford. It won't. It doesn't matter what it does. You know, it doesn't matter what it does. It will not be Old Trafford. And that's what worries me as well. Because I just find, new stadiums look great, but they're not it's not what I want, really, if I'm being honest. But it is what it is, I suppose. It is what it is. Can I just remind you that it is Black Friday sales day and we've got 25% off on the website. You can click the link in the description or you can just use the code Black Friday. We do deliver worldwide. Lots and lots of things we've got available. Obviously, we've got like the Butcher hoodie and everything like that. This is our new design, one of our Christmas jumpers we've got that you can get hold of. And of course, we have got this bad boy, the knitted jumper. I don't know how many of these we've got left. The discount doesn't work with these because we haven't really got that many of them left. So there's no point putting a discount on it because loads of people will try and buy it and loads of people have already bought it. So it doesn't seem fair to do that. But you can still get some of these and they do ship worldwide for Christmas and they are very, very good. Check it out through the link in the description. The United Stand on Shopify. Thank you very much. Right, I'm going to leave you there. We will be back after the England game. I am doing the England game on That's Football as a watch along. If you want to join me for that, it's a 7 o'clock start. But we are doing a Cody Gakpo watch along on That's Football now from the studio. I'll push you over there if you're interested in getting involved. 55% of you want to stay at Old Trafford. 45% of you would go to a new stadium. Cody Gakpo watch now. We started talking about him. He's going to be playing in 20 minutes time. We'll be doing a watch along on That's Football. Join us. We would be honoured if you would join us. I'll speak to you later. Remember, I'm on after the United Stand. I'm on here later on at about 9 o'clock.